We are live here at Audi Lakeland. What's going on? And I am joined by Danny and Holly. We're talking about so many things today. It's Sunday. It's early, but we're here and we're working. We're going to talk about that. What about working on Sundays? Some automotive groups are open on Sundays, some are not. A lot are not. There's different states, there's different things going on. We're not casting aspersions or alleging any facts and all of that, but we're here in Florida. We're in Lakeland, Florida, and we're gonna get into that. I wanna save that for later, but I really wanna front load this because I wanna talk about the EV market. And I'm a consumer myself. I'm thinking like, what do I want for my next car, right? What am I gonna do? Do I want a car? I mean, right now, like you've got a GT and I a GT, phenomenal vehicle, like that's super exciting. It's something I'm thinking about, but I'm like, we only have one car. Like, can I make it work for a family? It's got the range. What about range? What about price points? What about all these things that come into it? We talk to customers every day. So it's like, as an expert in the automotive space, I'm like, I don't fully have a grasp on it, right? And I'm not afraid to admit that because it's constantly changing. I think the customers are in the same spot. So as someone that has an EV, Danny, like, with the GT, this is I think your second GT. Tell me about that experience. Tell me about having it, charging, all these things, and why you got the GT.
Okay, so I actually have had, so this is actually my third EV that I've had.
Wow.
So I had a e-tron Sportback when it first came out. The big thing with the difference between the first time I had one and the time that I have one now, a whole lot more chargers. So like when I had my first Sportback, could not find chargers anywhere. It was difficult. Wow. And this was like...
How long ago was this?
It was probably 3.5 years ago. So 3.5 years ago, weren't a lot of chargers here. It was specifically here. We're in Lakeland, so there's not much out here.
Describe Lakeland for people that don't know it.
Lakeland is right in the middle of Tampa and Orlando, and there is just, I mean, it's small town vibes over here.
Most people just drive by it.
Yeah.
Even though we're literally, like if you had an arm, you could throw a football and hit the Highway 4.
Is I-4, yeah. Major highway right outside of our window. So, but not a lot of charging stations. So when I first got the Sportback, I was super concerned about where am I charging, and primarily most of my charging I'm doing at home. Right. Now, there's a lot of places like people who work at hospitals. There's chargers there. A lot of people have, places.
Tell me about like the difference for those that don't know. There's a big difference between level 1, which is like your basic plug, level 2, which is maybe like an appliance at 220, and level 4, which would be at a dealership or a major place like that or whatnot. I want to let the audience know that we only have one manager on today.
20 installed, which is like a dryer outlet. That'll charge it. That's like your overnight charger. You plug it in when you get home, and midway through the night it'll shut off and it's fully charged. Okay. So that'll charge it normally in about 7-8 hours. So when I had my Sportback, that was primarily what I was using. Wow. And was just charging at home. I would just charge it overnight. You're good to go. It had about 220 range.
So level 4 is kind of like at a dealership or maybe your Tesla supercharged things. Those are where you get 80% charge in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Mr. Zane may have a question for you. I don't want to interrupt this because I know. So we're going to be paying back. You have to be already to understand that right there. So he may have something for you. Go ahead. You want to say something?
So the level 3 is Electrify America, and with Audi, when you buy a new like electric vehicle, they actually give you charging credits. So at those Electrify America ones, which when I went from my Sportback to my GT now, I pulled up the map. There's like triple the amount of chargers.
It's really coming on.
It's growing a lot.
That's awesome.
So it was really, really nice to see that because I hadn't looked since I got rid of my last EV because I didn't, I deleted the app. I didn't need it. I had a gas car for a little bit. So
if we lose you here, we may lose you for the duration. Hopefully not. But if we do, and we understand that, and we're helping customers here, and we're getting things done. What's your overall experience right now? If you were in the market again, as you just recently were, for an EV, where would you be on it? What's your level of comfortability?
So very comfortable. My GT is one of my favorite cars that I've had. My Sportback was one of my favorite cars I had. And I'm a person, A6 was my favorite car.
Yeah, I had an A6.
All day, all like
Good size, luxurious.
Yeah, perfect. Gets great gas mileage. For the size of car that is, it gets unbelievable gas mileage. So one of my favorite cars I've ever owned. specifically one of my favorite Audis I've ever owned. But I mean, I've had Ford, you know, all kinds of different brands. But that car is like, that's my
Oh, it's amazing. It's
favorite.
such a good car. Okay, someone may have a question for you,
Yeah.
so we may see you in here in a bit, maybe not. Thank you for that. That's awesome. Holly, so tell me, I mean, you're working with these customers every day. In fact, if you want to, you can put that on. You don't have to, but if you want to, or hold it, or whatever you want to do. Yeah, that's fine. What's your vibe on it? Like, what are customers saying to you about the EV situation? What are their concerns? How do you address it? Like, what's your thoughts on it?
I think the biggest problem or the biggest question that comes across people's minds is range and how it compares to Tesla. Tesla's advertising over 300 miles on range. I know that we give a buffer of 30%. It's a lot different. So we give a little bit of a buffer. So on the MSRP sticker, you'll sometimes see 290, 280, but it can also be a lot more than that, just depending.
It can vary. So someone comes in, okay, let's pretend I'm a customer. I don't know anything. It's like, hey, okay, Holly, good to meet you. My name's John. How are you? Right? Listen, I've heard about EV. I don't know what to do. I've heard maybe there's some different incentives going on and whatnot. We don't need to get specific, but it's sometimes we want to drive. Sometimes we go to Disney World. Sometimes, what if I want to go to the Keys? I don't know. I mean, I only have one car. Like what do I need to know about this whole EV thing, or should I get a hybrid?
Have you ever had an EV before?
No. Mm-mm.
Perfect. So when we introduce people to EV, I know the question is also charging. Are they going to run out of charge or battery on the roadway? There's apps for that. There's built-in programs to the computer of the car to let you know where the nearest charging station is. There's all these different safety features available for you. So along with the sensors, the cameras, and so forth, it's a reliable vehicle, in my own opinion. And I drive American Muscle, so for me to
You do. She does, absolutely. But you get what I'm saying? Like, you know, would you recommend it, or what would you be weighing out, maybe, if you're looking at an only car? If you've got a family comes in here, you've got, you know, a family and they've got one kid, maybe two, where would you be pointing them to? Are you still looking at a normal Q7, a Q5? Would you say, hey, what about this Q8 that's all electric now? Would you be saying Q5e with the hybrid? So, you know, you've got some electric range, about 30 miles, but just in case you've got this, you know, 4-cylinder gas motor to back you up, how would you walk through that conversation?
Well, of course, we want to gear the purchase of a vehicle to the family's needs. I'm not going to shift them out in the car that has...
No, of course. But I mean, what's the logic you work through? Go ahead.
I would say starting off, how much space do you need? Do you travel a lot? Is this something that is going to help you in the long run with gas? We don't know where oil prices are going, what's going on with the economy and the market. It's not enough to justify maybe a 40 grand difference in, you know, a Toyota Camry versus an e-tron GT or something like that. But it's also just, are you ready to move up? Are you moving with technology? Are you comfortable with lack of technology? A lot of people like a nice basic premium package. Not a lot going on, they just want to drive the brand. They've been family members of the brand for years, and that's what they're comfortable with.
So that's a great point. Let's do two things right now. So again, we're live on LinkedIn, so we're not gonna be promotional on this one, but I wanna explain what's going on here. Number one, I wanna talk about the buying motivations. And then number two, I want to walk through, as an example, Audi's line and how we think about these things in regards to electric and hybrid vehicles. Mm-hmm. So step one is, when I started, you know, I've been in and out of the automotive business for about a decade now. And I know that it was, and even before then, it was a big thing like, hey, I want to help the environment, whatever. And I'm sure that's still there, but I'm not hearing that as much. Like what are the buying motivations? Someone that's interested in EV, or they know they want EV, like, why do they want that? Is it to save on fuel and economy mostly? Is it potential incentive? Like, what does that mix look like?
I would honestly say it's lifestyle.
Okay.
It's the personality of the person, where they're at with technology and EV. If they have a big family and, you know, EV is not something that's been advertised to them, you know, the market media is going to be advertised towards the family or towards the lawyer, to the engineer, CEO, you know, different people. So it's based on your like you were saying, people that haven't really heard or seen too much of EV.
Right.
It's based on your access to it. So
it's kind of, so you think people that want to be that forward looking and leaning, if you will, and want technology, they're more into the EV, you feel?
yeah, I would say they're more curious about it. They're
Okay.
more interested.
Okay, how do I just want to say that? Like, let me tee this up. So so here I have like some stats and some data out there. Here's our website, and it says, this is by Gallup, this is very recent. Megan Brennan here is the author. Headline: Most Americans are not completely sold on electric vehicles. And if you and this was back in April, so it's pretty recent, I believe that's right, in the byline. Yeah, April 12th, 2023. 4% of Americans right now own EVs, but 12% are thinking about it. And 39% say electric vehicles help climate change. And so there does seem to be, we don't want to get too political here, but it does seem to be a little more Democrats, right, that are most likely to own EVs and say they help climate change. So there is that aspect to it. I kind of touched on that a little bit. We don't need to get into politics here, but in terms of the buyers and the buying motivation, where the market is, there's still a very small amount. So I mean, for every EV you're selling, basically, this isn't quite right. I think existing, you've got 25. If you have one owner for an EV, you've got about 25 owners. Is that right, the right math? I hope I'm doing the right math. Yeah, I think so. It's a little early on. So, you have 25 people that own, internal combustion or non-EV, if you will. So, how does that mix play out? Because now we can hit that, but then we can also let's tee up what Audi's offering. And a lot of these automotive manufacturers are now saying, listen, by this year, whether it's 2025, 2027, 2030, X%, if not all of our fleet is going to be EV. So there's, yeah.
You see a lot of like Chevys coming out with their EV, discontinued sports cars, American Muscle. They're all moving into EV. So whether we want to stay out politically or not, it'll always be a political decision.
Do you think consumers are going to embrace that, or do you think that that's going to maybe potentially supercharge the used car market, where people are like, I don't want to, I mean, when I was at Ferrari, for instance, I was a manager at Ferrari in Texas, and I can remember when they had just released a turbo car. Mm-hmm. And there's some people like for Ferrari and that type of stuff, like I can't tell you, it's the look, it's the sound. They have sound engine, like it's a huge deal. And so I had customers that are like, hey, I don't want the 488, that's turbo, that sounds different. I want the 458.
Yeah.
And that's, and do you, maybe this is asking too much, but I mean, if you were to sort of forecast or prognosticate here, where do you think, with all these fleets going heavy electric, what is the consumer going along with that? Is there some pushback? Like, how do you feel? I mean, because you're right there front line with the customers, what's that looking like?
I think it honestly just sparks curiosity. You don't see e-trons out. I know with one of our coworkers, we drove down to Naples to go pick up an e-tron GT, and the entire drive back, there was no other car on the road similar to it. Even when you have the Sportback like Danny is driving, you don't see a lot of those out. So I think the design overall attracts the public eye. They hear it's EV, they're a little skeptical, they stand back, and then they see the facts. We pull up fact sheets for them. We show them different things. The test drive helps solidify it, and also giving them the reassurance of charging stations. Again, it's not fully committing the customer. It's just sparking a little bit of curiosity to where research falls into play, and then opinions are formed, and they go from there.
So we're about the 15-minute mark. Let's maybe go to like 30 minutes. I think that's plenty, because we both have work to do here. And look, so that's interesting.
Of EV. Mostly when people come in, they know what they want, and they're just ready to go ahead and get what they're here for. So for us to bring about a conversation of EV, it's something that has to happen very early on and kind of like ignite that.
Interesting, but there is some kind of awareness out there. Okay, so let's talk about what Audi is offering, because I think that as a way of explanation and sort of to set the table, because I think that also helps work through some of these buying decisions that applies to really everybody at all the brands, a lot of the brands out there, in my opinion. So at the top of the range right now, we've got the Audi GT. Explain that vehicle. That's almost like almost a supercar, if not a supercar, right? That kind of has that A7 Audi Sportback look. It's like a coupe sedan look. You explain it maybe.
Have you ever seen Grand Tour?
Yeah.
Or any kind of YouTuber where they take all the different electric vehicles and put them side by side. It's a monster on the street. The headlights, the front design, the grille, the body style itself is designed purely to help with drag and also just to be appealing to the eye. So
it's almost sort of like if an Audi R8 became a sedan, kind of with the coupe-like look, right?
Yeah.
And it was all electric, if that makes some sense out there, right? And it's kind of like Porsche, like almost all the vehicles somehow, you know, 7 look, you know, sort of deal. Okay, so that's sort of top of the range. And then now we've got the Q8 that's been very, very popular, and that's now become
electric as well. Fully electric.
What's on the GT, roughly? I mean, if you don't know the exact specs, not a big deal. This is not a quiz, but just to try to explain something.
No, of course. The GTs are going to be a little bit lower than the SUVs themselves. So we're looking at roughly about 245 to 270. Again, we give a 30% buffer just because we don't know the driver personally. So we like to go ahead and give you that range just in case.
So when you throw that number out, 245 to 270, my own personal feeling is I think like 400 to 600 mile range is kind of the sweet spot. Obviously anything beyond that. When you tell someone that it gets 240 to 270, how do they feel about it? Like, are they okay with that? Are they worried about that?
I get jumped with Tesla has
Okay.
all the time.
So the competitive.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I get that. Okay, so that's fine, and that's a good. So let's talk about that, and then we'll get through more of the range. Well, actually, we'll put that aside because that'll be a whole conversation too. Okay, maybe next Sunday. Then you go down to the Q8, and what range are we looking on with the Q8? That's an SUV. That's a big that's a luxurious 2-row SUV.
Same chassis as the Lamborghini Urus.
Exactly. And the Q8's has done amazingly, and that type of shape, whether it's the BMW X6.
I think it's an interesting introduction. It's definitely the largest one that Audi's presented. But I think it's one of the most attractive models between that and the Q4 because you have your Q8 e-tron, your e-tron Sportback, your Q4, and the e-tron GT.
Okay, so I'm going to work down. So the GT, we talked about that one. The Q8 e-tron is like sort of the pinnacle of the electrified for Audi, the electrified SUVs. Then you have the. Would you put the e-tron next? I guess.
I would put the Q4.
Q4, excuse me. And you said that right.
No,
and you've got the Q4. Now, and then we have this sort of in-betweener, the Q5e, which is a hybrid, not fully electric. You get about 30 miles of range. Is that about right?
30 miles per.
Pure electric on the Q5e. I think.
So overall.
Yeah, I think. In other words, if it's fully charged up and you're driving, I think you get about 30 miles of electric range, and then the EV kicks in. I think I knew someone that had one, and I think they said, yeah, I got tremendous combined mileage. But of course, if you're going on long trips, then that's where you may have more issues with it. Around town, you'd be phenomenal with it. Mixed driving, then it's somewhere in between, right?
I don't know. That's an interesting topic that you bring up because I actually brought back a hybrid from Clearwater.
Yeah.
2 months ago. I took the trip down there and came back on a half charge, and unfortunately, like a quarter of a tank of gas. The Audi dealership down there didn't gas it up or anything. So my first immediate reaction was like, I'm going to break down on the side of the road. Like I'm gonna have to find a charger or something. And honestly, realistically, I pulled straight into Audi maybe an hour and a half later. Hooked up to the charger, still had enough charge left. I think I only had like maybe 20 miles till like I had to switch over to gas, but
it was fine.
Yeah.
How much demand for the what would you okay, hybrid versus EV? What's the demand level there?
I feel like for every 5 people that look at EV, 1 would look at the hybrid because people are either fully in or fully out.
That's very interesting to me because to me, my own feeling is I think that if you had a great product in hybrid, I think that could be, and Toyota, no less than the Toyota CEO has talked about hybrids, and so this is why it's so interesting right now because nobody really knows like where exactly. I mean, there's this major push towards pure EV, but I mean, there are these conversations about internal combustion, ICVs versus BEVs versus hybrids versus maybe what about fusion cells, hydrogen? There's all kinds of different things. Okay, and so then you talked about the Q4. Now that's something that, for whatever reason, I don't want to misspeak, but let me phrase it. Let me shift it a little bit. I would have, and then we'll start shifting topics here and wind down. Why? I would expect that would have sold a lot more. I mean, it's like, I know there's the ID4 for VW. That seemed to be very popular over there. Mm-hmm. And this is obviously a more luxurious, same platform version of it. What's going on with the Q4s?
I think that people that look at like a smaller SUV, the Q5 size, they're not looking to go electric.
Okay.
They typically, from what I've seen personally, small families or maybe a single mom or something like people that aren't fully comfortable nor want to explore EV, and the people that go into the Q8s, well, now they have no option, they have to go fully electric. But when you sit inside of a Q8, you know this, like, it's like a plane. There's so much shoulder room.
Yeah, there is.
There's like a broad area, and in the Q4, it resembles something like a Q5, so it's a little bit more compact. So when people want SUV, they don't necessarily want that in advertising as well.
That's interesting psychology there. So I think that's a really good explanation and thank you for that. Because would you say that the people looking at the Q4, maybe it's an only car, maybe like more my situation. I mean, people with the Q8, there might be 2 or 3 cars in the family.
Yeah.
So you've got some optionality, or you're more tech focused, or maybe more or whatever it is. Obviously, it's a different market there, right? I mean, a Q8 can be 50 to 100% more than a Q4, right? So that's very interesting. So this is what I'm saying. We're going to see how all this plays out. Now let's shift gears a little bit. We have some other topics we want to talk about here very quickly in the next 7 minutes. Okay. Overall, I gave a little bit of a discussion yesterday in the market and where I think it's going, and we didn't dive too deep in it, but just a gloss on it. Okay. What are you seeing out there with people? I mean, it's a little bit quiet here on Sunday, but it is Sunday. It is early. I do over there where there's a huge church and it's filled right now and whatnot. And we'll talk about the Sunday thing. And Danny wanted to have some comments. We may get them back. We may not. And that's okay. Step one is, do you feel like the buyers okay, let's make it simple. Do you expect June to be better than May? How was May for you? How was May here? Let's do a comparing, a sort of a temperature check and a forecast.
I think May was a phenomenal month for us. I'm only on this will be my 4th month of commission. So being new to sales, obviously my background is 5 years in the service department. There's not really a fluctuating,
right.
When it gets busy, it's just always going to be busy. I feel like summer's right after tax season. That's what I'm predicting to be a little bit busier. So this should be a good summer.
Why was May good for you? Because I've talked to other people in the business, and it was like, oh, it's slow, or it's crickets. It seemed to break late. Yeah. Like when I was talking to people on the phone, like, oh, like I talked to people that had 1.5 cars out, and a week before that last week, and then they finished up with 7 or something like that. You know what I mean? Or hey, I was salesperson of the month, and it's looking strong. And hey, I did it again. So did it break late, or why did it work here? Why did it work for you?
Again, it's my 3rd month of commission.
So it's hard to know. We can't make the total prediction.
Because the month before I had less than half of what I had last month.
Right.
So it was definitely a big difference. I think it's genuinely just the people and the opportunities presented to you. So who you speak to, who has, the better positioning to buy a vehicle at this point in time, who maybe doesn't. And also explaining the whole process does as well. And with Cavalli, we have a great process.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I think part of it is they say you got to load the wagon, right? So it's a funnel, it's a sales funnel, it's all that. So maybe a lot of it was, and I've seen that in my own career. It's like you go somewhere new, you start and then about that 3rd month you can really hit your stride. But I think the store in general was doing good. Okay, so let's talk about prediction, and then we'll get into Sundays and we'll close it down. What do you think about June? Do you think it stays the same? It gets better? It gets worse? Why? What are the buyers telling you? Don't know.
I have no idea.
Who don't know? We'll find out.
I've talked to a few people, and unfortunately, like I haven't had much going on. So in my head, I would always like to keep a positive attitude and just be open to opportunities.
Do you think that people, when you talk to people, you just are the buyers optimistic? Are they kind of nervous? Are they waiting? Are they ready to go? Like, do you have a read on it at all?
So I know we're not promoting because we're advertising,
right?
But I think that rates in the economy kind of have people a little bit skeptical. So that's why
the overall economic conditions there's some nervousness out there.
Yeah.
I think that's right. I think there is nervousness out there, and I've talked about that yesterday. Like, now that we have the budget deal and the debt limit we're past that issue for now. Obviously, that's still with us, obviously, but in terms of what was going to happen, maybe that provides some clarity. Maybe that provides some visibility. We'll see. I'm with you. Like, and I'm someone that studies it. I think I'm cautiously optimistic that maybe it gets a little bit better. As I think that there's going to be, there's somewhat. I'm not alleging anything, but there's some cyclicality to this, and maybe there's some people look. I don't know. I don't want to get too. I'll leave it there. I think as we get into 2024, I'm cautiously optimistic that maybe there's a little more bipartisan that we can get. Anyway, so let's talk about this in the last 3 to 5 minutes. Being open Sunday, and I wish we had Danny here, and I think this is longer. I'm gonna have to we'll probably do some more of this later. What's your feeling on that? That's maybe unfair. I don't know. Let me put it a different way.
It was like, what management is watching?
No, all of them probably. If not now, then later.
Yeah.
Let's phrase that a little bit differently. There's some car dealerships that are not open Sunday. They feel like, hey, time with the family and time off and all that, which is we totally, absolutely, right? I mean, everybody needs personal time for whatever that is, right? I mean, you can't, work. I don't think that it's good to work, 24/7, 365 ad nauseum, right? That just doesn't work. But if you want to win, you look at the numbers and say, okay, well, you're losing 1/7 of your potential business, maybe more because it's on a weekend. I think if you're in it to win it and you want to be a top store, then that provides you a competitive advantage, or you're at least not at a disadvantage. But then part of the mix is, and that's why I wish we had, and we may bring it up again when Danny or Tony or other management's here, then it's like, well, what about coverage? What's our staffing needs and everything like that. And to me, it's kind of like, I love it. I'm down with it because it's opportunity. If you provide some optionality for staff to make their own plays a little bit, right? And they're like, people can't. But I mean, I think there's that. But then also you have to have the balance of staffing. People don't want to see a flooded floor or anything like that, right? And that's not something that the sales staff maybe enjoys. So I think that, and again, I'm very biased on this, but I think that to make that work, so I'm going to say this, and I'll get your reaction. I think it's one thing to come in and you're slammed with customers and you're selling cars and you go home, you're like, you know what, I put in my 5 hours, 7 hours, whatever it is, and I made money and it's all good, right? It's another thing where you're here and there's nobody here, right? And it's like, wait a minute, I could be doing X, Y, Z at the beach, at home, out with the friends, or sleeping in, or all that type of stuff. So I think it really comes back to, if you want to gear a store to be a top contender, being open Sunday could be a competitive advantage or not a disadvantage, but you have to have the customers there and you have to have the marketing there, and it all works together, and you have to have staffing that, again, my own bias is I want top players. I'd rather see 15, 20, 30, 40 car people than, I'd rather have one 40 car person than 4 10 car people. I don't know. I mean, and there's that constant debate in the industry. I've said enough. With what I put on the table, what's your reaction to the Sunday question?
Well, of course you want to, acknowledge the fact that 95% of people, their job is not their life. Their job's not their personality.
Absolutely.
So to have that regenerative time to just kind of relax, do your laundry, do chores, do errands, whatever you need to do, be with your family and spend time outside of a chaotic and stressful atmosphere. people don't want to admit it. Sales is very chaotic and stressful.
Very stressful.
But to take a step back and to actually have some days off, which our management is kind enough to alter the schedule to best benefit us, so that we have that time to ourselves. And the sales floor is not flooded. So it gives everybody an equal opportunity to kind of be able to take their game up, be a 15, 20, 30 car salesperson, and be the best that we can be.
You know, that's an interesting point, and I want to remark on that, and we'll close it down on this one. I want to see how it's like, you know, this is a lot of people talk about, a lot of business leaders out there, LinkedIn and YouTube, Facebook, and others, things we have. I mean, we're maybe different generations, right? Okay, can I say that? Can I say that? Well, yeah, right. If I can go in a time machine, right? But this is a group here that I think are you know.
We're not 18, but we're not 60 years old.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so we love everyone, and peace, freedom, love, equality for everybody, right? But I mean, I think that this is a really great group of professionals here.
Thank you.
No, absolutely, it's fun. It's a great atmosphere, and I think that you can speak to this very well here as we wind down in that. You know, what's your outlook on it? Because sales is difficult, right? It is. The store is open 7 days a week.
I don't think I ever saw myself being in sales until I came to this store.
But you guys seem to be pretty happy, and people are loving it. Like why? What's working? What's your outlook on it? Because you can speak to this better than I can speak to this.
Well, like I said, I never saw myself in sales. I never wanted that persona of, my God, like I can't walk in here and she's a salesperson. She's going to try and eat me alive. Like she's going to steal my money. I don't want to be that.
They're jumping out of the bushes.
We're running through the parking lot.
Right.
So, like, honestly, I just go into the mindset of everything. I think I was talking to you earlier. Like, just think of lavender when you talk to people. They're just another person, you know, like you and me. So
having a conversation.
Exactly. And just helping assist them. And if they don't want something, that's fine.
Do you think that you represent or are representative of, like, you know, the modern workforce or something like that? Or do you think that this atmosphere, in other words, are you different? Is the store different? Is the ownership, like, what is making it, in your opinion, what's making it work here, and you know, why?
I think training. We go through a lot of training on how to approach customers, how we're different, how we promote, how we say and verse different things. And it's not verbiage, it's not scripts. It's actually speaking to people and understanding, you know, what they're looking for. Again, how to better assist and serve them. We just kind of take that into consideration instead of just trying to sell products. I mean, of course we're in sales. We want to do
100%, always.
Sell a car.
Right.
I would love to make a paycheck.
Definitely.
But I'm not going to sit there and be this false advertisement of what Audi and Cavalli represent.
You want to sell a car today, I want to sell a car today. There's no question about it. But there's an authenticity, and there's a humanity,
of course.
Right? And I think, and what you're saying is that's supported by management, supported by ownership. Listen, I think that's a great conversation. I think that's fair. I love it. I appreciate that. We covered a lot of ground here. I'm sure we'll continue the conversation. We hope you and your family and your colleagues out there have a great Sunday. Anything you want to say in closing, Holly?
Have a great weekend, and we'll see you at Audi Lakeland.
There you go. Thank you, Holly. Hey, for Holly, I'm John, and for Danny, I'm John DiValero. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Let's go over here and close this.